What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the Philly Friends podcast. And I am your host, Matt. As always, I'm here with my buddy Rob. What is going on, Rob?
Not much, man. Enjoying a nice day out today. Ready to talk some sports.
So today we're hitting you guys with a double header. We got NBA talk and NHL talk. The NHL talk we will strictly hit on Philadelphia's own goaltender Carter Hart. The NBA, we're going to hit some trade deadlines and talk about a couple buyouts and, go from there. Tonight we have Mr. Green Honcho in the building, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be hitting on some ENG topics. Honcho is going to be giving away some ENG necklaces, so you might want to stay tuned for that. And I'm going to be dropping some news on a possible tournament coming to both systems later on tonight with Honcho, and Jelly will be here as always. But for now, let's just jump right into the NBA. So we had a trade deadline on Thursday. There was, I believe, 23 trades made and 47 players moved, roughly. I'm not sure the exact number. It was the most active trade deadline in NBA history. So there was a lot of teams making moves, wheeling and dealing, trying to get themselves ready to go on this run in the playoffs. The first deal that I really want to talk about and hit real quick is the deal with the Rockets and the Heat. Coming from that makes a big impact on Rob and I's team, the Philadelphia 76ers. The Miami Heat ended up trading for Victor Oladipo. The Rockets received Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a second-round choice. Kelly Olynyk is in the process of getting a buyout with the Houston Rockets, and there's conversations that him and the Boston Celtics have mutual interest in doing a reunion. But Victor Oladipo to the Heat is the most important part of that deal. And, the Heat are losers of the last 6. Oladipo, I believe, is suiting up tonight for the first time in Miami. Pat Riley stole Oladipo from Houston. It makes the team better, in my opinion, if you get Victor Oladipo who doesn't get hurt. Rob, what is your take on this Houston-Miami deal that was done over on Thursday at the buzzer, in a sense?
So, honestly, I kind of think it's a little bit risky of a deal for Miami. I mean, the two guys they gave up weren't terrible players. They were pretty good role players on that team. And they gave it up with the hopes that they're getting 17, 18 Oladipo. But he hasn't been that guy even remotely close to him since then. So, I mean, they took a pretty big risk, I think. If they're not getting the same guy that was a third all NBA team, then that might have been a bad move for them to hurt their roster depth for a guy that's not performing up to what they were expecting.
Shooting to the Sixers real quick, we could hit on that 3-team deal that actually happened about 2 hours before the Oladipo deal. I was hoping Philadelphia would have pulled the trigger on Oladipo when we found out Kyle Lowry was not being moved. It seemed like Toronto's asking price was too high. Now they're talking about a possible sign and trade this offseason. I don't know what exactly Toronto's going to expect in the offseason if they didn't get it at the trade deadline. So they might not even be able to work that out. But shooting to the Sixers got a little bit of help here with George Hill coming over from Oklahoma City. And what's going on, Dre? So the Sixers got George Hill. He hasn't played since January 25th. He broke his thumb on his shooting hand. They are stating that he will be practicing within the next couple of days. So that's going to be a big addition to that team as a benchman who is a defender, who can create, for his teammates as well as he's done in his career. It's not Kyle Lowry. I don't think it puts him over the top, but it's definitely interesting to see George Hill there. They didn't give up much. It was 2 twos. Tony Bradley and Terrence Ferguson actually went to the Knicks in exchange for Austin Rivers. Austin Rivers just agreed to a contract buyout. Not exactly sure where he's going to end up going. If I'm Doc, I might try to get him to come to Philadelphia. Wouldn't hurt to have Rivers come off the bench there. Rob, what's your take on this George Hill to Philadelphia?
Well, I think Hill was obviously not the first choice. They were trying to get Kyle Lowry. They couldn't get it done. And the next best thing they could get done to bring a guard in was George Hill. I don't think it's a bad move. I think it does still give them some veteran presence that I think this team needed because it is a pretty young team. And you're definitely getting a guy in George Hill who's not afraid to play some defense. So it's just adding to that defensive mentality that this team seems to be built around. They're pretty much the opposite of Brooklyn. This team's focused on guys who can defend, where Brooklyn has a bunch of shooters.
Another interesting thing to bring up here with Philadelphia. It looks like Joel Embiid is set to be back this weekend. So that's definitely a big plus, non-trade or buyout topic. Knowing, they're 5-1 since Embiid got hurt. They play Denver tonight, and then they got Cleveland, I believe, on Thursday. So Embiid coming back this weekend is going to be huge. Looking at the rest of these deals, the one team that has not an impact right away on Philadelphia getting to the finals or even getting to the Eastern Conference Finals is the Clippers. I feel like they did a really good job at getting Rondo. I felt like the Clippers needed a veteran presence at the point guard position. That's one who understands winning, who's going to come in and get that locker room to not be divided and buy in. And Rajon Rondo gives you exactly that. I don't care what reports said when he was in Boston. He was 25 years old, 26 years old. He's definitely grown up. He's definitely a veteran now in the NBA. You trade Lou Williams away, who is, arguably the best sixth man ever. But his numbers weren't productive enough to say this was a bad deal on LA's part. It's interesting that this was the only move done by either LA team at the trade deadline. The Lakers did just sign Andre Drummond off of a buyout. Andre Drummond is a monster on the boards. I think that definitely helps the Lakers' chances of repeating. I don't care how many 40-year-old Jedis they find to put on Brooklyn. I don't know if that helps them beat LeBron in LA. LaMarcus Aldridge is one of them 40-year-old Jedis that signed with Brooklyn as well in the buyout stage. A guy that Philadelphia will actually get to see tonight, actually two guys. Denver was really active at the trade deadline. They ended up trading for JaVale McGee. They traded 2 future twos to the Cavs and then turned around and traded R.J. Hampton, Gary Harris, and a first to the Magic for Aaron Gordon. I do like what Denver's doing. I do like the addition of JaVale McGee.
That was a huge move for them, in my opinion. That added a lot of athleticism that I think that team lacked previously.
I watched a little bit of their game last night, or 2 nights ago. And Aaron Gordon looked very good. And I feel like that's going to help the Nuggets. I still don't think they did enough to compete. I don't think Aaron Gordon's going to be that guy that comes in and helps Denver get over the hump and beat the Lakers. I think the only person at this point that could come in, waiver wire, that could help the Nuggets get over the Lakers in the Western Conference is going to be Jamal Murray. He hasn't produced at the level that everyone was expecting him to produce at after what he did in the bubble. So that kind of goes hand to hand with Miami. You were expecting Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero to have really good seasons after watching them in the bubble, and they've been struggling, and it's been hurting Miami. So, if them two guys show up every single night moving forward, and Bam and Jimmy stay healthy, Victor looks good. I mean, Miami's a good team. Denver, I think it falls all on Jamal Murray, how good that team can be, because you have Jokic, who's the best center in the league. Sorry, Joel. But to me, that's kind of where I'm seeing Denver. They're still not good enough to beat the Lakers unless Jamal Murray turns into bubble Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon can hit consistently from the outside.
Yeah, they need Jamal Murray to step up and become a true superstar in this league and get closer to Jokic's level and be that second star behind Jokic, and then have Aaron Gordon being that third-tier star. And then I think that they could actually maybe give the Lakers a run for their money. But if Murray can't step it up like that, then they're going to have to find that third guy somewhere else.
Staying in the Western Conference, the Blazers went and got Norm Powell. Bigger guard, good shooter. He comes over from Toronto for Gary Trent and Rodney Hood. I think the Blazers actually make out better than a lot of people thought they would with Norm Powell. I think Norm Powell gives you a Gary Trent and a Rodney Hood in one. To me, Powell is just a better scorer, shooting. He's a better shooter, than Gary Trent and Rodney Hood both are. I also think Powell isn't that much of a liability on the defensive end. Somebody like Rodney Hood, who's not been known defensively, getting rid of him and bringing in Powell, who's going to be able to step in and play the three and play defense. When you have Carmelo on your team, you need as much defense as possible. What else we got here? I mean, I don't really want to hit on anything not real big or something that's not going to make a difference. The Celtics traded for Evan Fournier. The Magic received 2 2s. Fournier is not going to come in and wow people. He's not going to be this guy that's going to be like, oh, Boston's now a true contender. But he does give him bench depth, and he is a good defensive guard. As he stated, you could Google him. I'm not really sure what that meant, but that doesn't really get me excited over in Boston. Shooting with the biggest deal, I think, of the day probably goes to the Bulls. As much as I like Oladipo going to from the Rockets to the Heat, Vujicic and Aminu going to the Magic, or coming from the Magic to the Bulls, and the Magic received Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter, and 2 firsts, 1 in 21 and 1 in 23. Giving Zach LaVine a duo, and if you could get another piece this offseason, this team definitely starts looking more like a competitor in the East than they did, the beginning of this season. Rob, how do you feel about I can't say his damn name. Vucevic going over to the Bulls?
I think it was a good move for Chicago. It gives them the second piece to go with LaVine. Now they're still going to have to find another top tier guy in the draft, I think, to really compete out east with some of the top teams like Brooklyn and Philly. But it puts them one step closer to that point. And so in that regards, I think it wasn't a bad move at all. But I still don't think it makes them a threat in the East.
No, I think they still need to find a third piece, and then if they find a third piece this offseason, I can kind of see them starting to make noise.
Yeah, it's going to take another guy in there, though. Levine and Vucevic are not enough to wow me at this point.
So really, the only move left is DeMarcus Cousins, who is a free agent. There's a lot of noise about him going to Brooklyn. That doesn't, again, you're adding another 40-year-old man, just a name, to a team that just has a bunch of 40-year-old men. It's starting to look like a retirement home behind their big three. So I'm not really that worried about it. The one move not named Kyle Lowry that surprised me was not moved on Thursday, and there was a lot of talk about it. Was Lonzo Ball. Lonzo seemed like he was going to be on the move. There's now conversations that he wants to stay in New Orleans. So we'll see exactly what happens this offseason, as he is a restricted free agent. So the Pelicans do own his rights, so they more than likely will match anything. I feel like they'd be kind of dumb to let him go. And we got news out of LA earlier today. Let me get that exact number up here. The Los Angeles Lakers have offered Dennis Schroeder a 4-year, $84 million extension. He has declined the extension, and now the Lakers and Schroeder seem to have to continue talking about this contract extension that I think the Lakers hoped was getting wrapped up on that contract deal right there. But I guess Schroeder thinks he's worth more than $21 million a year. So, I mean, that's all the moves and everything that's happened in the NBA since Thursday. Well, including Thursday. Rob, does your mindset change for the Sixers now, seeing the way Brooklyn has loaded up?
Brooklyn's the odds-on favorite in the East. I thought that before these moves. The moves have just kind of solidified it further to me that it's kind of. I mean, right now we're looking at if Los Angeles is healthy in the playoffs. Everybody knows. I think they're the team to beat out West, and if this Brooklyn team stays healthy and together, I think everybody knows they're the favorites out East. I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise.
Do you think the Sixers can challenge this team?
Yes. I don't expect them to win in a 7-game series, though.
All right.
I think they would be heavier underdogs going into that series than people think. I think they'll play better than some. I think they'll play better than what Vegas is going to predict that they're going to play. Put it that way.
All right, I'll say this now. Timestamp it. It is March 30th, 3:36. The Philadelphia 76ers are going to the NBA Finals and will lose in 6 to the Lakers.
That's a bold claim as far as I'm concerned, but it could happen. It could definitely happen. That Brooklyn team could fall apart. I've seen super teams fall apart plenty, but man, that firepower is just real tough to overcome. They got 3 of the top 15 players in the NBA right now. Now, I know Durant hasn't played in a while, but I think that's just Brooklyn going, well, why rush him back? We're winning games anyway.
Yep.
And they're just giving him extra time to make sure he's 1,000% for the playoffs. But, I mean, if James Harden keeps playing the way he's playing, that's a tough team to beat, man.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Let's go to commercial real quick. When we get back, we're gonna talk Carter Hart and the Philadelphia Flyers and what exactly is going wrong there.